Spoiled kids, what was your reality check? Experience 1. When I was complaining to a college classmate about how my laptop battery wouldn't last for a whole class and I was really hoping for a new one from my parents for Christmas. I then learned her parents were homeless and she was just hoping by Christmas they'd have a roof over their heads. Big wake-up call. We remain friends to this day. Experience 2. My family was middle class but treated me like they always had plenty of funds. When I heard that they took dollar out of their retirement savings so I could go to a private university, I turned in my transfer notice and came back to an in-state college and picked up a job as well. Experience 3. I had a few reality checks. The first major one was during a Christmas gathering where my nephew received 2 new PlayStation consoles and 1 new Xbox console. The idea was to send a PlayStation to each parent's house as they were separated. His comment was, "Is that it?" The amount of red that I saw was insane. I was a spoiled brat, but I never made a comment quite like that. Made me realize how insufferable it is to be around a spoiled brat. The second was when my mom had a stroke. Found out she took out a lot of loans in secret to afford a lifestyle facade. I was used to my mom fixing all my problems, whether it be monetary or education-based. We were told my mom would have 48 hours to live. Needless to say, I sobered up quickly and got my crap together. Nearly 9 years later, both mom and I are doing great. Experience 4. My mom got seriously ill with cancer and ended up in the ICU for 5 months. I had to get my crap together really quick now that she couldn't fix my messes anymore. Experience 5. Seeing my friends and in-laws struggle to afford extracurriculars for their kids. Growing up in a high-income area, everyone I knew, myself and my siblings included, participated in activities like Girl Scouts, dance, gymnastics, soccer, softball, etc. There was never any question of affordability, and uniforms and gear were always purchased brand new. Now I see parents in my age group, early 30s, only being able to afford 1, maybe 2 extracurricular activities per year. Girl Scouts, gymnastics, and clubs like the YMCA are too expensive. Dance classes for my niece were gifted as a birthday present and leotards were purchased used from thrift stores. She can't do gymnastics because it's way too expensive. Definitely made me feel privileged and somewhat ashamed of how I took those opportunities for granted. My partner and his siblings never did anything outside of the included school activities due to their family being tight on money growing up. His siblings with kids want to give their kids more than they had, but it's so expensive. Experience 6. Sometime when I was a teenager, I realized my experiences growing up were not like other kids. Some of my friends said I was rich, and I honestly didn't see it at the time. I thought my parents' house was average, but it wasn't. Living on my own in one of the most expensive cities on the planet was a baptism by fire. You learn very quickly where your dollar should go and where it shouldn't. Experience 7. When my father died. I suddenly went into protective mode for my mother and younger siblings. My mom had always been a psalm, and although we had an amazing support system from her family, emotionally I was not equipped for such a loss. My younger brother also switched majors, quit partying and cutting classes, and started a very successful business. The sense of responsibility was overwhelming. Experience 8. Had older siblings growing up who left the house for college around the time we moved to South America. Spent my pre-teens and teenage years living in a country where we had a maid and a cook, a driver, and a guy we paid to have my horse ready for my lessons. So, I never was tasked with taking on household chores around the time kids took them on. I never had to lift a finger. Want a snack? Maria would make it. Dirty laundry? Went on the floor and Juana could pick it up, wash, iron and hang them up in my closet. Make my bed? PSH, it was made for me. Reality hit me smack in the face when we moved back stateside. Literally. I was 17, almost 18 when I told my mom that I was going to go meet some friends and hang out. She said that it was fine, but first, I had to load the dishwasher. I still remember this clearly as yesterday. I, absolutely offended and full of haughty teenage how dare you mentality, yelled at my mom.
I am not a maid.
This was immediately followed up with the first and only slap I've ever received. The truth hit her as hard as it hit me. I was spoiled and entitled, thinking I was above doing dishes. I had never done them, much less helped around the house. As far as I was concerned, we should have people for that. Guess who learned how to load a dishwasher? I also had to be instructed on how to turn on a vacuum. I was humbled pretty quickly. My mom apologized profusely. She felt terrible that she reacted like she did, and I forgave her pretty quickly. As far as I'm concerned, it was the eye-opener that I needed at the time. Experience 9. I was late to the game when it came to applying for colleges my senior year of high school, so when I was accepted to go to a school 8 hours away from my hometown, I missed the deadline to apply for a dorm or nearby apartment. I ended up living in a house 4 miles away from campus with no car, and with the nearest bus stop being a 30-minute walk through tall grass next to a busy street with no sidewalks. I missed my bus the very first day of class and started sobbing. I called my mom and she empathized, but there was nothing she could do. That was the day I realized I had to start figuring things out on my own and life would no longer be easy. Experience 10. When my parents got divorced because my dad decided that drugs and hookers were more important than his family. All my friends from my private school stopped talking to me because I was no longer one of them. And I had to transfer to a public school. I pretended it was because I wanted to be in a co-ed environment and try out for cheerleader, but the reality was, we couldn't afford it anymore. My horse was sold. Then the IRS came after my family for back taxes and took my mother's bank account and our house and sold our belongings, including my white princess canopy bed. And to top it off, we had to move into the projects after that. This was in the 70s. Experience 11. I am the second child who got everything he wanted. My sister was the one to compromise everything for me. I wanted a new phone, I got it. I wanted a new computer, I got that too. Basically, everything I wanted I got it. While my sister was still using her old stuff. Now comes the part where at some point I realized this is wrong. When I go over memories of me getting the stuff, I want my sister's eyes to pop up, and they look sad, man. I ruined her childhood. I just want to roll into a ball and cry. Not for me, but for her. I was a horrible brother, we fought a lot, and everything had to go my way. We are grown-ups now, and every now and then when I look at her, I feel shame. She has a beautiful family and is doing financially light years better than me. I'm so happy that she's getting everything she wants, but I know I will never get rid of the shame of what a spoiled kid I was. Experience 12. When my mom suffered a total mental break that lasted about a year, and somewhere in the middle of it I realized I was treating my brother the same as my mom was treating all of us. I was so ashamed and broken that I seriously considered ending my life, but I knew my mom would likely do the same and I couldn't make my dad and brother lose so much even if we were combined, making their lives hell. It really made me address my anger issues, and though I then developed some self-harm problems, I started the process of becoming mentally healthy that day. I am so proud of how much work I've put in and how well it has paid off. I probably wouldn't even recognize myself now, but I am blessed to be living an extremely low-stress life, and that is a huge help. Experience 13. I failed out of a rich kid private college, and the only place that admitted me was night school at a large public university. For the first time, I was surrounded by working class people who were busting them assess to improve their lives, working 1 or 2 jobs while going to school. Changed my perspective. That and a couple of girlfriends, one now my wife, who were the first in their family to go to college, who kicked the rich kid arrogance out of my sorry ass. Experience 14. I wouldn't say I was spoiled so much as I was uneducated about money. I went from being a low B student working 30 hours a week in high school and going out and partying way too much to someone whose parents were proud when I got into college, but who then asked,
So, how are you going to pay for it?
Crap, I thought you were going to pay for it. For 18 years, we'd never talked about it, lol. And I had been spending my fast food money as fast as I could make it. They never said a word about it. So, 10 years later, with the help of scholarships, grants, and a lot of PT jobs, I finally finished my degree, lol. I did not make this mistake with my kid. She's been saving every day of her life, and her college fund is pretty strong. Plus, she gets some scholarship money. She should graduate debt-free, and I'm so freaking proud of that. Experience 15. My dad stopped paying for my bills when I was around 25, and although I was working, all my income was disposable. One day I guess he said enough is enough, and I suddenly realized that my wage was barely enough to live on, let alone go out for brunch, drinks, buy designer clothes, and all the rest. Whilst I am forever appreciative of how much he helped me and for how long he supported me, I wish he had pulled back earlier. I learnt lessons later than all my peers, and when all my friends were starting to come out of minimum wage jobs and beginning real careers in their mid-20s, I was plunged into freshman poverty with ramen noodles and bus riding. £55 a month for a phone bill suddenly seemed luxurious, and don't get me started on my withdrawals from Uber. But I learned to stand on my own 2 feet and have promised to teach my kids these lessons much earlier. Experience 16. 2009 I graduated, Dad lost his job. 2008, parents lost their home, they got divorced, Dad blew through money he had saved quickly, Dad became an alcoholic and got married to one, Mom picked up minimum wage job at a fast food place after being a stay-at-home mom for 20 years to make ends meet. I started going to a community college instead of my university plan, and after a couple of years dropped out because I needed to work full-time. It was a shock to the system, but before this, I was a middle-class spoiled brat and probably would have stayed that way. Both of my parents are doing all right now. Dad is sober and Mom remarried, so she doesn't have to work. However, both my dad and stepdad are planning to work until they're dead. They are already in their mid-60s, and I wish I could do more to help them. Experience 17. My dad, who was fully paying my rent, trips, insurance, bills, and grad school bills, as well as was the sole provider for my mother, younger sister, and myself, suddenly lost his job. I was only part-time employed while in school and was on a snowboarding trip out of state when I found out, with like $30 to my name and no savings. Found a real job within 2 months, which turned into a career, savings account, first ever new car purchase of my own, and insurance paid for by me, and living situation fully paid for by myself as well. I was 25 and now I'm almost 28. Sometimes you need an event like that to kick you into adulthood. Edit for an additional funny story. I was making $42,000 living in downtown Denver with $1,800 studio. I realized quickly the difference between an apartment that you can technically afford and an apartment that you can afford when other utilities and bills are accounted for. Experience 18. Traveling abroad was actually funny to me. It was such a TV sitcom-style reality check. Got my MacBook stolen on a vacation to Costa Rica. The first-year MacBooks came out. Went down to the police station to file a police report. Freaking LOL. The police station was a windowless cement building with a tin roof and no drywall inside. Just wires mounted to the cement and occasional wooden frames. Easily the most ramshackle police station I've ever seen, but it was right on the beach, overlooking the ocean. As the sergeant? Typed up the police report on a literal typewriter in 2007 while making small talk. When I told him where we were staying, he replied with,
I teach surf lessons to guests there.
which was a sobering splash of reality that he was not the same type of police officer that exists in the US. What really landed the reality check was all the open beer bottles lying around the police station. I interrupted him with something like,
You know what? Forget it. Don't bother. I'm not getting that laptop back, am I?
him,
You could go down to the local market something or other.
me.
Or I could go drink about it and wait for some waves, probably.
I was 15 at the time. Him.
Haha, yeah, that's probably your best option, to be perfectly honest.
His face was lit up at this point because he was clearly about to call it a day at the precinct and go surfing. After that, I saw him a few times out on the water, and that was it. Experience 19. Once my roommate moved in, I realized how privileged I was. She does not have a good relationship with her parents, so they don't help her with anything. I, on the other hand, have a very good relationship with mine. They help me with absolutely everything. I sat down and explained my finances to her and casually told her about how my mom pays for my car bill and my car insurance and how if I'm ever short on money, I can easily just text my parents and ask them for it. She stared at me as I came from another planet. I didn't realize until then it wasn't like that for everybody else. Ever since then, I've taken steps to take more accountability with my own finances. I stopped shopping as much as I used to, and definitely second-guess going out for the night needlessly. Seeing how hard she struggles when I'm pretty much doing just fine really opened my eyes to how hard it actually is out here. So, for now, I pay all the bills when they're due and she pays me her half when it works financially for her, and although I'm still spoiled in many ways, I've managed to find a way to make it work for her and me in our favor. Bills are due now, but you won't have the money till next week. Okay, I'll call my parents and they'll pay for it, and when she has the money, I just give the money to my parents to pay them back. You can be spoiled and still find a way to share the privilege if you care enough. Experience 20. My brother was the spoiled one, I was the girl. I think the wake-up call was my brother, 22, telling me, 19, that I couldn't be on the boat, which was the family boat, unless I was invited by him. My brother was the type to get physical, so I didn't push it. One night some friends that we had in common came over and it was time to go on the boat. My brother waved goodbye. Our friend was like,
Wait, why aren't you coming?
He said I can only come if I'm invited, and I wasn't invited.
It's your dad's boat and he doesn't work. Did your dad tell you that? Well, then I'm inviting you onto your family's boat.
She gave him the dirtiest look and realized that my brother was probably always going to be trying to dictate what I can and can't do. It was a good wake-up call to prepare my life. I did fall for a trap on my mom begging me to support his new career because
family will always remember when you were there for them.
I'm in year 10 trying to get him to answer confidential questions I have on my refinanced mortgage, and in year 5 just begging for my baby photos. It took 5 years of crying to my cousins just for them to tell me the location of where my mom was buried. Edit, decided to come back with a second story on how I knew he was a sociopath. Same summer. My brother is a professional jet ski racer funded by my dad. I was not. I had to work 3 jobs and pay for college because my father wouldn't pay for a BFA, and I didn't qualify for student loans with his income. In the beginning, he started when he was 15 and I was 12. We moved from New Jersey to Georgia so he could compete in Florida every weekend. So, this meant his 26-year-old mechanic and 27 his wife from South Africa lived with us for around a year. So, it was 6 living in one home, and we had 2 homes in NJ. We moved back to NJ after he graduated high school. It was a family thing by the time I was 19. I was CPR and first aid trained to help him during training in the open ocean. I would study races and give him notes, all of it. The summer I was 19, my parents had us living in the shore house and they would come down on the Friday. My brother would be flown out every Friday, while my father paid people to drive the skis on a flatbed. He had 14 racing skis, an RV, a Chevy Blazer, a Nissan Z, and an ATV to tow the skis on the beach. I would come home just expecting him to be training, and he was still sleeping off whatever hangover he had from the night before on the couch. I would beg him to just run the 3K to stay in shape. He punched me in the stomach. My dad pulled the money when he was 22 and ended the finances. He got audited by the IRS because my dad never reported his winnings. I was just floored that the money he won wasn't covering it like my parents told me, so I told them.
Good, you lied. You told me we were treated the same, and clearly we're not. Remember the year you were so pissed I earned too much to be a dependent on your taxes?
We hope you enjoyed listening to today's stories. If you want to see more stories, check out these videos or check the links in the description for more videos. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And ring that notification bell.